John Norquist is the president and CEO of the Congress for the New Urbanism. Headquartered in Chicago, the organization was founded to promote neighborhood restoration. Between 1988 and 2004, John was the mayor of Milwaukee, a city that chose not to build some of its planned highways, even tearing one down that had been built. As I ride the train from Milwaukee to Chicago to meet John, I wonder what he thinks of Seattle and our Alaskan Way Viaduct.
The purpose of the road traditionally throughout human history has been multiple purpose, particularly in the urban conditions. So you have movement so that you can move where you want to go, and also social purpose and economic purpose. So for example, retail along a street, the social purpose, the sidewalk where people can casually meet. Those purposes have been undone by the regulations and mandates of the U.S. government and the state governments. They basically have converted the street to one thing, just movement, and even that, it doesn't do so well at rush hour. My background is that I grew up in the Midwest, and I was born in Princeton, New Jersey, but I didn't live there very long. And after I got out of college at the University of Wisconsin, it was in a recession, so I became a factory worker, and I got active in the union, did the union newspaper. And I was part of a coalition trying to block a freeway from coming through one of the parks in Milwaukee, which is where I lived by then. And the state assembly representative was for the road, and some of our members had called up, and including my sister, and complained about it, and he basically blew him off. So then I ran and beat him. That was the first time I was elected to office. After serving in the legislature, I became mayor of the city of Milwaukee. And one of the roads in Milwaukee was almost a 1 mile long stub that was called the Park East. And I'd been part of the coalition that had killed it. It was supposed to be a ring road around the downtown. It would have created an elevated highway in front of Milwaukee so you couldn't see Lake Michigan anymore. And that was part of that whole thing about movement, that nothing mattered but moving traffic. And the state wanted to route traffic right through the middle of downtown. So people that would be going from Green Bay to Chicago, or from northern Michigan to Kentucky, whatever, instead of routing them around the city, they wanted to route them right through the city. And so they wanted to build all these roads. We killed about half of them. Well, Milwaukee was a very rich city 100 years ago. It was the center of the machine tool industry and a lot of other industrial uses. Plus, it was a major port for shipping grain out to Buffalo, and then it would go down the Erie Canal. But it was a very, very rich city, and so it built a very strong physical environment. And by the end of World War II, there were over 300 miles of streetcar, 200 miles of interurban rapid transit, 110 miles of the electric buses like the ones Seattle has. By 1958, all of that had been removed, and the freeway building era had begun. The city population dropped from 747,000 to its low point, just under 600,000. Now it's back up above 600,000. In Milwaukee, an anti-freeway movement started to build just about the same time it did in New York. Jane Jacobs stopped the Cross-Manhattan Expressway, which would have destroyed Greenwich Village, Chelsea, and Tribeca. Three of the richest neighborhoods in the world, with the most value, the most jobs, art, culture, everything you'd want. and they would have run the freeway right through the middle of it, would have destroyed it. And she stood up back in the mid-'60s and said no. But in Milwaukee, we had the same thing happen, and by the mid-'70s, the freeway building came to a halt because of all the pressure coming from neighborhoods. But in Seattle, it seems to me that, you know, conquering traffic congestion is something that should be a really low priority. You know, a certain amount of congestion is actually good. If you have no congestion or virtually no problem with congestion, that may be because nobody wants to be there. Seattle fights over things. That's because if I were a Seattleite, I'd say that that's because it's so worth fighting over. It's a beautiful city. And design has been an element of the politics there for some time. Charlie Royer, Mayor Schell, Norm Rice, the current mayor Greg Nichols have all been interested in design issues. The public's interested in design issues, and so there's always a big fight over it. And that's actually mostly a good thing. You know, it's kept Seattle from making some really big, ugly mistakes.